All right. Okay, so everyone's here. We have several things to go over today. I'm just going to share my screen real quickly and show you this. If you type in on the ENMU webpage SRCC, you're going to see the Student Research and Creativity Conference. And for the last several years, students in experimental have been using either their signal detection experiment or some other experiment to enter into this symposium. And you can win money, which is kind of nice, but also you will be able to put this on your CV, okay? So, type in SRCC, see the deadline for abstracts is March the 6th, which is a few weeks from now. And then the conference will be held on April 6th, and it'll be on Zoom, okay? And I'll talk more about that as we get closer to it. I'm going to show you here something else. Okay, this is called a CV. I don't know if any of you have made one or heard of these before, but this is something that you construct over the course of your undergrad, and you'll learn about how to make a formal one in senior seminar. But this kind of shows you one of my prior students' Vitas, and what it has is just everything that you've done as an undergraduate. So they call this a CV. If you make a resume, that's something that you would use to go right into a career after you get your undergraduate degree, right? But you make a CV if you're going to go to graduate school, okay? And so this will be your name and then your address, your permanent address. And then you'd want a permanent phone number and a permanent email, okay? So not an ENMU email, but like a Gmail account or something like that, okay? And then you put your expected graduation under education, Eastern New Mexico University, and whoever your advisor is, okay? Now this person, did some internships. She was able to participate in the summer research program at Northwestern University, where she was later accepted, and she got her PhD there, actually. So this is kind of an advanced student that I had been working with back when Dr. Speller was one of my students as well. So not only this student, but Dr. Speller, who's here now, were my students back then in North Carolina. And I had them make a CV much like this, okay? Then you would, put in work experience. None of you probably have done any research yet, so, I would delete these sections. And you just want to put in research. I would change this to research in classes, right? Or class research. And then you would put anything that you do in experimental psych or in research methods or whatever other class that you've taken where you've written a research paper. I'd put that here, okay? And then you could say class and conference presentations, okay? So if you want to participate in a student research competition or conference, I guess, you would not only put the classes that you that you made presentations in, but you would also put, this student research conference here as well, okay? So this student, had several things that she had put on here, but there was a research symposium at our old university, and she presented there, so she has that under the class and conference presentation, okay? I'm not going to show you this whole thing, but it just kind of gives you an idea that you would, put things as you finish them into this kind of format and just kind of update it every time you do something, right? So it's a good idea to get in practice to do this. And what I'll do is I'll post this on Canvas, and then you can start to create your own. Okay, just change everything in it and use it. Okay. All right. The next thing that I want to talk about is what you're doing this week for the rest of the week, um, and kind of finish up what I was talking about last week. Okay, I talked about writing a results section in some detail, but I didn't talk about everything that needs to be in the results section. So I'll do that today, and also what to put in your discussion section. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to talk about writing the references section, and then also the last piece of this research paper is going to be an abstract. Okay, so I'll teach you how to write an abstract. Okay, so let's talk about writing the results section. Now, last Wednesday, I posted kind of a short video, and we had kind of a short class on how to write up the results section. And I said to start it out by talking about your hypotheses first. Okay. Okay, this is. Okay, let me go back. Can I just show a single screen here? How do you do that? Hide presenters view. Okay, there we go. Okay. Anyway, I'll just use this. I talked about your two hypotheses. Go ahead and list them, all right? One is for discriminability and one is for beta, or bias. Okay? And so this paper talked about fashion icons. Okay, this was last semester. Someone made a signal detection theory experiment based on whether people were 1960s fashionistas or not. Okay, and so they showed women and men dressed up in clothes from the 1960s, and they asked, is this a fashion icon from the 1960s, or no, it's not. Okay, and so they should show low discriminability according to what how she set up her study. The second hypothesis was that she thought that people would say yes a lot in her study because although they couldn't see the face of the person who had on the 1960s regalia or whatever it is, she still thought that people would say yes a lot. Okay, so that would be a liberal bias that she's predicting here. Okay, and then let's see. In order to test the first hypothesis, which is discriminability, the research reported the number of hits, misses, false alarms, and correct rejections from all participants. And then she put this in a table, okay, showing the signal detection theory matrix, which is here. And you can do this too, or you can just list them in the paragraph, okay, as I talked about last week. But she set it up as an APA table. So you put table 1, and then in italics, you put signal detection theory matrix, or you could say hits, misses, false alarms, and correct rejections. And then she had the actual condition, signal present, signal absent up at the top. And then human decision, yes or no there. And then she totaled her hits, misses, false alarms, and correct rejections in this table. Okay? And then she says, after tallying up the number of hits, misses, false alarms, correct rejections, hit rate was calculated. That's the number of hits divided by the number of hits plus misses. And then the false alarm rate was also calculated. Okay? And then she states what the hit rate was and what the false alarm rate was. And I talked about how to do that last Wednesday. You go back to that lecture and see how to do that. Okay. So the rest of this paragraph kind of talks about hit rate and false alarm rate. Okay. And what she did was she actually went to a paper to support her sentence here. It says the hit rate represents a frequency of saying yes when signals are present, and false alarm rate is the frequency of saying yes when signals are not present. Okay, and that's what these guys said. So she actually looked up a paper to support saying that. Okay, and then she gave the hit rate, false alarm rate. The next paragraph is about discriminability. Okay, we calculated it in an online calculator, and we found B prime. Okay, so she stated that, and then she stated what B prime actually is, and she found another source that says it's a standardized score. It's the Z of hits minus the Z of false alarms. Okay, so that was a paper that she used as a source. And you guys don't have to go all out like this, but I like to see that you're understanding what's going on. So sometimes it's better to do more than less, right? And especially if you're going to make a presentation on your study, let's say it's going to be the signal detection study, it's nice to be able to talk to the audience and tell them what these things are, right? So they'll understand what they are. And you get a better chance of winning, or, whatever. But, just to sound really professional in terms of what you're saying. All right, and then she goes on to talk about value of B prime equals 0 is guessing. So, people would be guessing if they got that low of a score for discriminability. And then B prime equals 3. I think it's actually B prime equals infinity, though, is perfect discriminability. But that's what this paper said, okay? And so she went for that. The B prime obtained in this research is between 0 and 1. It was, what was B prime? 0.573, okay? And she said we can characterize that as low discriminability because it's below 1. Okay? And then you can find a paper that kind of talks about, what are the values of D prime that relate to like poor discriminability or good discriminability or excellent discriminability. I'm trying to think of the name of the authors of that paper. I think it's one of them is Toderoff or something like that. But I think I had the link last week for that paper, and then you can kind of talk about what is low, what is high. But you're not really supposed to, in a results section, say or interpret the numbers that you're presenting. So in this case, I'm just putting what she wrote, right? But in this case, actually, she shouldn't have interpreted anything until she gets to the discussion part. Okay? But, I thought this was such a good paper that I would kind of bring excerpts of it and show you what she did. And then the next part is about criterion or C. Okay? And her next paragraph talks about that. And I didn't show that part because I want you guys to write that part. Okay? Just like I showed you last Wednesday. Okay? So you want to continue writing the results section. You'll analyze the statistics for both of your predictions. One is for discriminability, and then one is for C or bias. Okay? All right, so she found scholarly sources to write the research story in the results section. Okay? Be very specific and don't interpret anything except for the values that you found for B prime and beta. Okay, so just present those, but then in discussion, talk about how you interpret the results. Okay. Now, how do you write a discussion section? It's not really too hard. You might take some notes here. You're going to start out with the main findings. Okay, what were the main findings? Well, you just presented in results what discriminability was, and now you're going to do some interpretation. Was this good discriminability? Was it poor discriminability? You're going to have to talk about that, okay? And then maybe cite some paper that talks about, what is good and what is poor, etc. And then you want to do a little bit of discussion on how it applies to real life. Let's say, let's see, I don't know. How does recognizing the 60s fashion icon apply to real life? I really don't know. It's just something that would be based on, I guess, a person's memory from the 1960s if they were that old. Or, they're just trying to detect whether someone might have been famous for their fashion back then. Okay? I don't know how important that is, but that's what she did. You're doing criminals that are
either convicted or are they convicted of a substance related crime or not?
okay. So this one is a little more easy to talk about real life in the case. We go around the community and we look at other people and we kind of gauge maybe who they are or what they do for a living or other aspects that we might perceive. And what if we happen to bump into a person who's been convicted of this kind of a crime? Right? We'd probably be really surprised, but could we just tell that a person is convicted of some kind of substance abuse crime just by the way they look? Okay? That would be one way to approach it. Okay? So maybe we're not very good at determining whether others are former criminals or not, right? But this is what you would say in this first part of the discussion. Okay? So discriminability is able to pick out the signal in the noisy environment that we live in. So, all the people that we come in contact, we really don't know much about them. So there's a lot of noise around the way we perceive other people. Sometimes we stereotype them. Sometimes we just take people at face value and think that they look like maybe they're homeless, or maybe they are a drug abuser, or maybe they're a criminal or something. And so we use these stereotypes throughout our lives to kind of, and why do we do that? Why do we want to put people in categories like that? Why do we do that?
Makes things easier.
Okay. Yeah, cognition can be made easier by making snap judgments about other people. That's true. And it simplifies you don't have to think too much or too complexly about what you're perceiving, right? So that's one reason why. Why else would we stereotype people?
I think it depends on either the environment that we grew up on, or sometimes like social media, news outlets, could be like visual representations of maybe their race or depending on like what stereotypes exactly.
Okay, yeah. So I think we do use it for ease of cognition, but we also have biases against certain types of people, and I think that plays into our darker side, right? When we're trying to analyze, is this person going to be a threat to me, or are they, someone who's not going to be a threat? It's kind of weird, isn't it? But it depends also on the situation. If you're at a party, sometimes you might size someone up and think that maybe they could be threatening at some point, or you're at a shop, you're shopping somewhere. I don't know if that's important. But why would identifying a substance abuser be important in real life? Could they be a threat to you?
theoretically, depends on the situation, I think. Like, I don't know. I feel like that has less to do with whether or not they use substances and more with like, the situation they're in which they're using substances.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And it seems like it's much easier to have people in person in order to gauge, they may look like a person who's addicted to drugs, right? But there are certain behaviors that are associated with that, or you can kind of pick up more signal, I guess, from them and determine, maybe they really are using drugs, right? So I should protect my property or myself. So these are all things that you might want to put in very formal words in the main findings for discriminability. I think that's important. And then you go on to bias. Why, I don't know, if you get a bias that is pretty liberal and people are saying, yes, that's a substance abuser a lot, that tells you also something about the people who are participating in your study because they're judging people based on their looks, I guess, right? And so, just looking at someone and not picking up all the other little aspects that we might pick up in real life, it means something, right? Just seeing a static picture of a person, it's hard to pick up characteristics of who they really are, right? And so, we do this. We look at social media sites, right, or something like that, and we look at a person and we might be biased toward them just in the way that they look, right? So these are things that you might want to explain in your discussion about bias. Okay? I think yours may be a little harder to talk about, maybe not, right? Some people who are not trained in a certain area, I think that they're at a disadvantage versus people who have had some exposure to things like looking at brain scans or PET scans. And so yours may be, I don't know, I don't think it's going to be that hard to interpret these things, right?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. What happens if you get high discriminability? What are you going to say?
I get high discriminability. I think I might try to relate it to like our country's drug education. Because in middle and high school, the common trick that they do is like, this is your brain on drugs.
Right.
And like, they may very well have been able to pick up the little differences, but I seriously don't think the
Yeah.
differences are so small.
Yeah, right. I don't think they're going to have high discriminability, but if you have a result that's different from what you expected, then you have to be prepared to be able to explain that. Yeah. And yours is about criminals too, right?
Yes,
Okay.
it's about if they look like a criminal by their eyes.
Oh, okay, yeah, high information. So yeah, as humans, we look at the eyes for a lot of reasons, especially when we're younger, because we're looking for emotional information and we're looking for, gaze, I guess. I don't look people in the eye too much because I have a little anxiety, right? But other people who don't have anxiety often look at the eye areas, especially on their friends and loved ones, right? To be able to detect a lot of things about, their emotion and maybe what they're thinking and things like that. Older adults, they kind of compensate for their hearing loss if a person's talking to them. They compensate by looking down the mouth area to pick up more information. They don't pick up as much emotional information from the eyes as someone who's younger. But I don't know if that applies to the study. Just seeing the eyes of a criminal, how does that apply to real life? When do we do that?
I think sometimes like in the court, a lot of the time someone who is Like, for example, maybe someone who's on trial for murder.
Yeah.
People say like, oh, it's in their eyes. You could tell by their eyes they have like a quote unquote look.
Okay,
So maybe that's a setting that we kind of judge based off of the eyes.
okay. So yeah, you could apply it to legal setting, right? That makes sense, yeah. Okay. All right, so anyway, state the main finding, interpret, was it good, was it bad? Was it liberal, was it, conservative? And then you move on to the next thing, which is limitations, okay? That would be like a separate subsection, bolded on the left margin. And you're gonna go limitations, and then, if you didn't run too many participants, maybe sample size was a limitation, right? Usually in a study, the bare minimum that you need for a one group study is 32 people, okay? And so if you're running, say, only 12 people in your study, you are getting a lot of judgments from them because you're going to get, 24 judgments from them, from each person. So the number of judgments is high. And so 12 times 24, is that right? We're making 24 decisions. 12 times 24 is what? 240 plus 48 is 3. What? 12 times 24. I would take 10 times 24. That's 240 plus 2 times 24 is 48. So 240 plus 48 is 288. Is that right? Okay. I can't do things in my head anymore. But yeah, it seems like that's a large number of judgments really for a set of participants. So that really is not a limitation in this case, I don't think. Another limitation potentially is, were your experimental materials perfect, or were there, certain problems with them, like were some of the stimuli lighter and some were darker, or some stimuli not centered on your page, things like that, and they varied or something. You know, were your slides timed well? Were they presented at 5 seconds each? Things like that. Those could be all limitations, right? Did one participant take more time and ask more questions than others? That could be a limitation too. It could be some kind of problem with the participant. Excuse me. All right, third thing in a discussion is called future directions for research, okay? Let's say that you've done a small study, excuse me, and you want to improve it for the future. What would you do to make it better? Okay. I'm sorry, I need water. But anyway, would you need more people, bigger sample? Would you need better materials? Let me get some water. I'll be right back.
Sonic, you trader.
I Sprite just sounded so good. I'm so tired. I've never felt like this since high school. And I'm like so.
My coworker gives me these, it's like a meal. It's like powder in the front of it. I swear that stuff like lives right back there.
Oh really?
Yeah. I get off work right. It helps so
called?
It's called Amino.
Amino?
Amino, yeah. They have like watermelon, pineapple, peach,
Oh,
and they help a lot.
do they?
Yeah, a lot.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Um, so anyway, I think I've gone through the discussion section here. Um, what do you do when you're a professor who smoked all your life and then suddenly you're coughing through classes? What would you do to improve your ability to lecture?
Hot teas usually help,
What
like
tea?
right before.
Okay. That would-
Some lemon juice and honey.
lemon juice and honey.
Yeah, it's not very pleasant, but it does will clear your throat.
All right, that's cool. Yeah, I'm trying to compensate for my bad habits. Okay, anyway, so you're going to write your results and discussion after you collect all your data this week. I gave you comments on all of your experimental materials, and I think I've finished grading all of those. So everyone in class should have those back with comments or make the edits, and then start calling your friends or contacting your friends and others to participate in your study. Let me go to Canvas real quick before I continue with this, because I want to see if anyone has posted. Let's see. Okay, let me go to this. Oop, there's this thing that get out of the way. All right. There we go. And I want to see in discussions if anyone has posted their contact information for their study. Because I asked you last week, right? I told you last week it might be a good idea to, okay, Melanie's done it. I'll be needing extra participants for my experiment. I'm happy to participate in anyone else's as well. Just let me know and thank you, she said. There's your email address. Okay, exactly did it. Wow. Okay, if anyone wants to participate in my experiment, go ahead and send me an email here. Okay, good. So at least 2 people in class have done that. And I hope you're collecting data like mad right now, because that's important. Because we're going to kind of finish up what we're doing for signal detection theory. Let me make sure this is correct. We did the introduction section, the prediction section. You just turned in your experimental materials, okay? And then you're going to turn in your data sheet. This is due February 20th, which is this Sunday, right? And your final research paper, which is on the 20th. That's this Sunday night at 11:59, okay? So we're going to be done with this whole 100-point project this Sunday by midnight. So you want to really work hard on that this week, okay? Get your data. And what I'm saying here in the PowerPoint at 2 p.m. is I would set a day this week where you're going to say, okay, that's enough data. I don't care if it's 8 people. I don't care if it's 20 people, right? I'm going to just cut it off right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and start analyzing the data, writing the results section, and then writing the discussion section. Okay? Because I want to get that done maybe by Saturday. And then maybe on Sunday, I'll just perfect things where I go through the references section, make sure everything's there. And then I write my abstract. That's kind of a, I'll talk about it Wednesday, but it's kind of a mini summary of each section of the paper. So it's a summary of the intro, it's a summary of the method, summary of the results section, and then a summary of the discussion section. So that's what an abstract is. But we'll talk more about that on Wednesday. But I think the important thing to do right now, between now and Wednesday, is go ahead and contact a bunch of people and collect a bunch of data. Okay. You guys have time this week to do that? I know you're probably working and stuff like that. I'm working too, but at least I have time to, do stuff like that. All right, so, collect a lot of data, try to. But then say, on Friday, maybe Friday morning, I'm gonna cut it off. I'm not gonna collect any more data. It doesn't matter, how much I've got. I'm just gonna cut it off and I'm gonna write the paper. All right, now, so after you write this abstract on Sunday and you turn in the whole paper, okay, then it's gonna be time to send me the abstract in email and say, is this abstract good enough to submit to the student research conference? And then I'll go through it and I'll edit it for you if it looks, if it needs a little help. Or if I say it's good, as is, then I'm going to ask you to go ahead and submit this, so you can go ahead and present. Okay, get something on your CV, like I said. All right, so I'm going to post the CV. Let me see where I can post it. Can I post the CV with an announcement? Let's see. Yeah, I can attach. Okay, so I'm just going to make an announcement and say, example CV. Oops, CV. And then I'm going to just browse and see, did I save this somewhere? Let me save it. Documents. Okay, that's a CV example. And then I'm going to post it right here on this link, okay? As discussed in Monday's lecture, here is an example CV, okay? And you can start constructing your own. It's not necessary to just jump on this right away because you have so much other things to do, right? But maybe at the end of the semester when you have more time, it's a good idea to go ahead and start constructing, okay? And I'm thinking that maybe a couple people in this class are actually taking experimental and senior seminar at the same time, okay? If you are, then you're probably already learning about CVs and senior seminar, but I don't think many people are doing that, okay? I think we had a couple people who wanted to graduate this semester and they wanted to take both classes at the same time. And so I allowed them to, but it's really not a good idea because it's all work for those two classes. So anyway, it's in announcements on Canvas right now. All right, that is all. Okay, any questions at all? Okay.
We actually just finished up in senior seminar creating the CDs.
Did you? Okay,
Yeah.
so you already know how to do it.